Hello from your favorite Grasslands PR team. We're back after a break for season 3?
Yep. Sure.
Of the best biome. My name is Rachel.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Allan. And we're going to think cold thoughts today.
Ooh.
I just want to get...
Terrible.
Nope. Nicole?
I'm having a horrible time.
Nicole, it's a good thing. I wait all year long to be cold. Okay?
Fascinating.
I do. When it snows, I go outside immediately. All right?
Right.
I am desperately just... I cannot stand the warm weather, okay? So we're going to think cold thoughts because it's a cold time of year. It's very cold outside right now. I don't even know. But it's very chilly, okay? And so we're going to be thinking about a very cold grasslands topic. So we're going to transport ourselves mentally to some of the coldest grasslands.
Siberia.
Mongolia.
Close. I'm talking about grasslands that are... closer to home. Okay. Canada. The Canadian prairies, where it gets occasionally colder than Antarctica and occasionally colder than Mars.
That's probably colder than the moon, too.
Very chilly. Probably. How warm is the moon?
Space?
I have no idea.
Temperature?
Space temperature.
Right? There's no atmosphere.
I don't know how space works.
I mean, yes. So it's very cold. Very cold. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the Canadian prairies. Now, of course, I don't need to, you guys know your Canadian geography. I don't need to. I can just assume that when I say the Canadian prairie provinces, you know which three I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But you should definitely just tell everyone.
No, why don't you tell me?
Victoria is one of them, maybe? I don't know.
Ontario.
I got nothing.
Pretty sure two of those were cities.
Yeah, they are.
We're talking about Manitoba.
Yeah, there we go.
Manitoba, that's the one that's just like right up north of North Dakota, borders like North Dakota, Minnesota.
Montana.
Got Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
A city.
Alberta, exactly.
There we go.
Good job,
Okay,
guys.
yeah,
Okay.
those all sound like cities.
I've definitely heard of all of those before. Just
Guys,
can't
it's
pull them.
right. It's so close to us. It's
I don't
It's
even-
not just America's hat, okay? It's a whole beautiful country.
For sure. I barely know America's geography too. It's not a matter of like, oh, I'm an American, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But it's clear you don't think about Canada at all.
I mean,
But you're gonna today. You're gonna today.
Great.
All right. Now, these places are interesting, the Canadian Prairie Provinces, and they are special because this is where you have the northern reaches of the Great Plains shift into the boreal forests of the north, which, of course, means that is also the zone of historic overlap between the plains bison and their lesser-known cousin, the wood bison. That's what I want to talk about today, because these are animals that are very good at being cold in this very cold place. Now, these are not two separate species of bison, of course. They are subspecies. You have the plains bison, which is bison, and then you have the wood bison, which is bison athabasca. So they're very, very closely related, but very different, obviously, because they occupy two very different habitats, right? You don't start seeing the wood bison so named because they prefer that ecozone of the boreal forest, right? So we're going to get into it. We're also going to pay some special attention here to, and this is like the topic that really kind of took me, took my brain on a journey. And I got really fascinated with bison restoration. Okay, just like the actual, like the conservation, the story of that and how that's going. Because there is, you would probably, I think one of you will argue with me about this, but there's probably no animal that is more significant, okay, ecologically or culturally to the Great Plains, to North American grasslands than the bison. Mm-hmm. Can we accept that premise?
I accept.
I accept, especially with the cultural part of it, because nobody likes prairie dogs, and I'm assuming that's what you meant.
There we go. Yeah, there's no one likes prairie dogs. We like prairie dogs. Yeah. But despite that high level of ecological importance, there are plenty of bison out there. They are ecologically extinct. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I remember like the first time I heard someone say that. I think it was like a wildlife biologist when I was doing like a master naturalist training or something. They said, described bison as being ecologically extinct, and that phrase just like, ugh. It feels like it feels really bad, because there are, again, like bison population. The bison as a species is stable, but they do not occupy anywhere close to the same niche that they did a century ago.
Right.
So, I was curious, like, so what does bison restoration look like? What are the goals for that? And what has been like the journey behind that? Because it is weird and frustrating, but it's very interesting, and honestly, kind of a little hopeful, I think, which is not what I was expecting. I was expecting this to be like, well, what's the point? They're ecologically extinct, right? Yeah. But as I delved more into the topic and read recovery plans and read research, and I kind of thought like, this is interesting. Like there's really actually something to this. Like there is actually some hope to be taken from this story. So let's talk about our bison friends, specifically the wood bison. We already talked about how much you guys know about Alberta. A ton.
There's a lot of ducks in Alberta.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me about one. Name one.
What do you mean?
Name one duck in Alberta.
Yeah, what do you even know about ducks? Name 5 ducks that you know.
Do you even like ducks?
You guys are insane. There's so many Ducks Unlimited projects in Alberta.
Prairie pothole region. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the prairie potholes.
Every duck.
Every oh, wow. Okay. Alberta is, as we just said, home to both subspecies of North American bison. It's also home to a place called Wood Buffalo National Park, which is the second largest national park on Earth. It's a big one. Okay. It is, it's like a controversial place that, for it to exist, because obviously it exists on indigenous lands. But it is ecologically a fascinating place. You have it being the home to this interface between the Great Plains and the Boreal Forest, and also a lot of other stuff. Natural whooping crane habitat. You have what's like a nesting habitat for whooping cranes. You have one of the most northernmost populations of snakes in the world there.
Ooh, what species?
It was the red-sided something.
Name 5 snakes.
Can't do it.
Okay.
It's home to one of the world's longest beaver dams.
It's visible from space, right?
Half-mile long. It's pretty good. Yeah, that's a lot of wood. It's a lot of beaver action.
Ooh, that's why the wood bison are there.
And they do love wood. And it is home, of course, to more than 3,000 wood bison, which is close to half of the remaining wild population. Dang. So it's an important place. And we're going to talk about, it's obviously so named for the bison, and it's sort of the central beginning of where wood bison conservation starts. So let's get a little background though. What is a wood bison? First of all, it is technically America's largest land animal. Ooh. Bigger than their southern cousin by about 20% or so. They get a little heavier. Yeah, it's significant. They're larger. They have like if you look at them side by side, wood bison have a much taller and more angular hump. It's like it's really like a clean, like, it's like it's very blocky and intense. That hump is something like they're like 6 feet tall at the shoulder. So this is a big animal, right? Which, don't ever get close enough to a bison to like appreciate that, obviously.
Yeah.
Extremely aggressive animals, but very large. And there's a few other differences where you can kind of tell, like, they're, physical differences. Wood bison are basically furred all the way to their tail. They don't have like this, cape that stops after their shoulder where you have like this thermal window of like short fur, know?
Oh, okay.
So they're like furred all the way to the back. They don't have like the...
Sorry, I just had never thought of a bison as being only partially furred.
Well, I mean, it's like, you have like the long, thick, scruffy
Is
cape.
it wool?
It is, yeah, I guess you can call it woolly. Yeah.
That Nicole's saying.
Bison wool, sure.
I think so.
I don't know.
Was it in the fibers book?
I don't know. I didn't read that whole thing. It was really long.
They also have sort of like longer limbs, longer legs, but like they don't have chaps that go all the way down to the bottom of their legs. Like, yeah, like
Sorry,
like
what?
fluffy chaps.
Yeah.
They
no.
don't?
They don't, which is weird.
Yeah.
But everything else is fluffy.
Everything else is fluffy, but like not the bottoms of their legs, which is weird.
Yeah.
So they can stand taller in the trees.
I don't know why that. I just pictured them being like climbing into trees.
Yeah. I was just picturing like a giraffe. Just a giraffe and bison.
Like just walking through the woods and then suddenly you see
So
bison
hump
perched
is
in
very
trees.
which
Yeah.
could look like anything to the audience who is listening to this in an audio medium.
Well, that was
so-
clearly me going up and then to the side. So like angle, bam, boom.
Yeah.
Could also be
Yeah.
a giraffe, though.
It could.
They also have a distinctive. Okay, they don't have the fluffy top that a bison, plains bison does on the dome.
Oh, yeah, because like plains bison look kind of like the vultures from Jungle Book. With their tops of their heads.
Yes, they do.
They have
I
like full
agree.
human hair.
At least in winter.
I might need to Google that later because I don't remember what this looks like.
It looks like a bison.
But no.
Their hairstyles are modeled after the Beatles.
Yeah, I think they are.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I think that vaguely rings a bell. But
So sorry. Continue.
wood bison, do not have the fluffy top. They have a very shaggy, like mane on top of their head. If anything, it looks a bit. One might describe it as emo.
Nice.
They have very long, kind of shaggy, swoopy hair. It is just like a little, like like a little
beautiful.
swoop. Yeah.
Why do they look like Willem Dafoe? They look like what are the face? What
It's
are the
an intense-
little
it's an
The
intense
Irish
face.
red cows. What are those little cuties called?
Oh,
The
Highlands.
Scottish
yeah.
Highland. Yeah, cows.
Yeah.
that hump is like a right angle.
Yeah, right? It's
Yeah.
very tall, very
You heard
intense.
Allan.
Which makes sense because, I mean, okay, think about the level of snow, the depths of snow that these animals are having to contend with, much greater than their plains cousins, right? So, after all, that is what the purpose of the bison hump is, correct? It's
No. What? It is?
Yeah. Is this the bison hump it's muscular.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It is for
their
bulldozing
heads.
through snow. Yeah, to access grass in the winter.
Right.
That is why they have it.
Okay.
So bigger hump, taller hump,
More snow
better
plowing.
bulldozing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
They're
okay.
very laterally compressed. When you look at them head on, it doesn't make sense that they're that skinny.
Yeah, right? Yeah, they are. That's a good point. They are very like narrow when you look at them head on. Very broad though. Okay, so those are some of the basic physical differences. The ecological differences are probably a little more stark though.
I saw what you meant about the legs being sort of bare-ish on the bottom. Not bare, but the chaps have a stopping point. They have like
Yeah.
little pantaloons and they like are high waters. I don't know.
Which is weird because there's this thing in animal physiology, and we've talked about it before. Like there's these rules, right? One of those rules is called Allan's rule, and it is like where as you go higher in latitude, animals have comparatively shorter limbs
Yes.
for their body because, I mean, why not? You know, you don't want, it's just a more opportunity to lose heat. Yeah. Okay. So it is weird that the wood bison, which are very high north, their historic range goes from like the northern prairie provinces through the Northwest Territories into inland Alaska. Okay. So these are like way up north. Why would they have such long legs and also exposed legs? It's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's also another thing though, which does make sense for them, called Bergman's rule, which is that like you get larger body mass as you go up. That's why polar bears are bigger than black bears, right? You know.
Yeah.
For more heat production. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so let's talk about the ecological differences, because those are a little more stark, right? Plains bison obviously need wide open areas. They're highly mobile, highly migratory, constantly in movement. Wood bison, though, live in a much less open habitat. So their habitat selection differs quite a bit, and their movement differs quite a bit from their southern cousins, right? After all, they are in a boreal forest. Okay, that is primarily where they're operating, but they are still a grasslands obligate large herbivore. Okay, so they need to still find, their diet is primarily graminoids. They do occasionally like browse on trees and stuff in the summertime, but they are still looking for grass in the forest. So they're a little bit different. They tend to seek like these nice open meadows within the woods, and these are like very wet meadows. Like, I don't know if you call them wet grasslands or grassy wetlands. You know what I mean? One of those situations. But that's what they're going for. Their diet's like primarily sedges and things like that from those spaces. But that poses a problem, okay, because they're wet meadows, right?
It's cold.
But they actually prefer that, okay? Like wood bison tend to thrive a little bit more. They have an easier time accessing those spaces in the wintertime rather than when it's warm, because they are wet meadows. This is a 2,000-pound animal. If you're on wet soil, okay, you will begin to sink.
That's why they have short pants.
That might be, yeah. Hey, that's a good point. Just dipping in the mud. But like drowning is a major concern for wood bison. You got to be careful. Okay.
Like straight up drowning?
Yeah, like drowning is one. That was listed as like a major threat to wood bison survival, is drownings.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's a dangerous habitat. There's also they have like much worse insect situation up there with biting flies and things like that than plains bison do. So there was like, I saw this paper that was like about how they basically select the habitat they're interested in based on how many flies are going to be there. Like that was like a major trade-off for them. And so seeking like, in the summertime when the flies are out, seeking like drier habitats to exist in. But then when it gets cold and it's wintertime, the ground is frozen, then it's like, yeah, let's go to these meadows. We don't need to move very much anymore. We'll just like hang out in this meadow and eat a bunch of grass. Let's bulldoze it. Let's just have a good time.
Nice.
But they're very well cold adapted, right? So they kind of thrive a little bit almost in the wintertime.
As long as they're not drowning.
As long as they're not drowning. Well, they're not drowning in the wintertime. Everything's frozen.
Yeah.
Everything is frozen. You have to the temperatures in like the mean temperatures that they're dealing with in this part of northern Alberta. Mean winter temperature for January, February is negative 21.7 degrees Celsius. That's the mean high. The mean high temperature, negative 21.7 degrees Celsius. The mean low is negative 31.8 degrees Celsius. So it's chilly up there. Obviously, when you get like, some polar vortex situations, Arctic air masses kind of blowing in, it dips way, way lower than that too. So it's very cold, but they're very well built for it, obviously. They also, as you said, Rachel, larger animals do a good job of, conserving their energy. Wood bison in particular are very good at slowing their metabolic rate down when it gets cold. Even bison calves, they still have a thick enough like undercoat and everything that they're able to maintain or reduce their metabolic rate down to 30 degrees Celsius. Okay, so like they can drop their body temperature quite a bit and still like be fine. Yes.
What is it supposed to be? I don't speak Celsius.
So for ruminants, like
Not that cold.
so 30 degrees Celsius is not very warm. Yeah, 30 degrees Celsius. Let's see. Just do the conversion in your head.
I can't.
Multiply by 9/5 and add 32.
I can't do it. I can't do it. How
that would be like in the mid 90s. That would be like mid to low 90s. 30 degrees Celsius.
And like normally they're like 101.
Yeah, because like ruminants run a bit hotter. I think for like ruminants, it has to be something like 102, 103 inside ruminants for the bacteria to really start bacteriating.
How do the bacteria inside a wood bison if the bacteria are frozen?
Well, they're not frozen.
They're just slower.
They're just slower, yeah. Because enzymes like have everything has like a critical temperature at which it won't function, and then there's there's like a range of temperatures where it'll just function not as well. But then there's like that ideal temperature where you start getting stuff like, and everything's like everything's churning in there. And it's like, that's what it probably feels like. It's just like, it's like it's like a washing machine, except it's all fermenting grass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the windows into cow stomachs? Because they're wild.
There's a lot of cool stuff going on inside ruminants.
Yeah.
It's really interesting chemistry, honestly.
It is.
Yeah.
The look of horror on Rachel's
They eat
face.
an incredibly low quality diet, and yet they're the biggest animals on on our continent.
Yeah, that's really cool. Sorry, I'm just picturing
A washing machine full of chewed up grass.
Yeah.
with potentially like an open window to the outside world. Yeah.
Yeah, just chock full of bacteria. Ooh, converting, cellulose into fatty acids. Anyway. Whew, guys, good stuff. So wood bison are a little different, right? They that whole habitat they occupy is kind of limiting to their numbers. They were at no point, because these meadows are fewer and far between. They didn't have access to the same kind of just wide open space that the plains bison do. So their numbers were never as high. Plain bison at their peak numbered in the tens of millions, right? Some estimates have gone up to like 100 million, I think, at one point. That wood bison, much lower, like in the hundreds of thousands. So it is a much more rare animal. At the beginning of the 19th century, I think they said their population was probably about 170,000. Okay. And thinking of where that's where they started. Okay. This would be a good segue into like their conservation story.
Yeah, now there's like 6,000, you said.
There used to be 170,000 of them. That number cratered, in the 19th century. Around the turn of the 20th century, there was about 300 of them.
Yikes.
It's grim. Okay. The same story as with the plains bison, though. A lot of overexploitation, a lot of hunting, a lot of development in that region. Logging, agriculture, energy, that sort of thing, all starting to mining, all this activity directly impacting their population.
Were they important to indigenous people too, the same way plains bison were?
Yeah, to the Athabascan people, and there's a number of indigenous nations up in that part of Canada that were reliant on them, and maybe not to the extent necessarily that the plains cultures were, because it is a different environment. Like the boreal forest is a little bit slightly richer environment in some ways, than the plains were. Still of importance to them. The indigenous people in that part of the continent, I think they've like continuously occupied that region for something like 40,000 years.
Wow.
Like the history is incredible there, and then a lot of things happened in the last 200 years. Yeah. So that number plummeted. That was that was at the turn of the 20th century, right? Then 2 decades later, an even bigger disaster would happen.
Oh, no.
Okay. And this would be the thing that would probably more than anything jeopardize the potential future of the wood bison and whether or not this animal would be able to continue its existence. In 1925, they transplanted, they relocated to Wood Buffalo National Park 6,673 plains bison.
Oh, my God.
Not good. Okay.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Did they just not know any better, or were they...
Well, now hold on. This was something that was controversial at the time.
Yeah.
Conservation biologists at the time were like, this is not a good idea. There's so few wood bison up here. We're going to transplant twice as many plains bison into their area. And what's worse, these plains bison were diseased.
What?
Yes.
They were known to be diseased?
They were known to be diseased.
Who?
Wild.
Wait, who is
That's
they?
so much money.
Yeah, like, who
It was
did this?
to like avoid, I think they were trying to like avoid mass cull or something, and so they decided to just relocate them instead.
Who's they? Like the government? The Canadian government? Like who did this?
It was
nonprofits?
let's see. I actually don't have a source on like who they is. I don't know if it was producers, but I mean, obviously it would have been with the sign off of the Canadian government because they're moving it to a national park.
Right, yeah.
So, yes. So
God.
a controversial thing that happened. Now, obviously this led to two things. It led to widespread hybridization between plains bison and wood bison, which, affects the, genetic diversity of the wood bison. And it also led to endemic diseases becoming stable in the population. Both very bad things. Now, the Wikipedia page, this is just a funny thing. The Wikipedia page is like weirdly salty about this. Whoever edited that, like, if you look at the Wood Buffalo National Park, they say wood bison, parentheses, not pure. Like, these are like they're not real wood bison. And like, it's like all over the place on their page that they are always like, oh, this is a genetically compromised animal. It's not a wood bison. Like it's a wood bison. Like they threw up air quotes around them or quotes. I'm throwing up, so I don't know, but like it's a contentious thing. Okay. Yeah. There was so much hybridization between these two, that they actually did a study in the 30s looking at all the different populations. Okay.
That much longer that's like 5 years later.
Yeah. They did a study in the 30s looking at all the different populations and found that there was like, even between populations of bison within this park, there was stark morphological differences.
Wow.
Okay, so you got like, it's all over the place. Like these are kind of, Franken bison at that point. And of course, like, most bison are already in commercial production. So they're already
Compromised.
interbred with cattle and that sort of thing, right? Beefalo, so like the genetic, the evolutionary,
Distinction?
yes, it's like it starts to fade a little bit, right? You're losing all the genes that make that allowed those populations to be stable in this region at one point.
Yeah.
Ooh, so that's real bad.
Was that like the one place where that like there were? Sorry, was every single wood bison affected by this?
No.
Okay.
And that was like the silver lining is that they did start finding very isolated populations of wood bison still in the Northwestern Territories, and like in even within the park itself, they found isolated populations of wood bison that had not interbred with plains bison, and those were the ones that they really focused on in terms of relocating them outside of the park
Good.
to become what is today the disease-free, stable populations.
Okay.
So
They do exist.
Whew, but boy, they really tread close to essentially making this animal extinct.
Right.
Just through one very questionable move that, again, at the time people were like, we shouldn't do this. We think like, okay, ecology is a fairly new scientific discipline. In the grand scheme of things. They didn't probably know better, but no, these people did know better. They did know this was going to be a bad situation.
That's wild.
Skirting disaster with the hybridization thing. The wood bison recovery really ramped up in the middle of the 20th century. They were initially listed as a threatened species under Canada's version of the Endangered Species Act in 1978. And that's when active recovery started. That's when they started transplanting bison out, started captive breeding programs, right? Managing captive herds and then reintroducing them into the wild, trying to get disease-free, stable groups of wood bison that can free range again. And it started working really well, right? So they listed them in 1978. The population went up to almost 10,000 by the early 90s. So a big boost. They've remained listed as threatened under the SARA, the SARA, which is the Species at Risk Act. That's Canada's version of it. To this day, actually. So the recovery is going very well. They do currently have, I believe, 9 different populations that are disease-free, which is good because the diseases they have are very, very bad.
Yeah.
The diseases they got from plains bison included BTB.
What is that?
Bovine tuberculosis. That's Mycobacterium bovis. It's a very, very serious infection. It's chronic, obviously, like human tuberculosis. It can actually affect human beings as well, which is creates a whole public health concern with it. There are really wide-ranging impacts of a bovine tuberculosis infection, especially in a free-ranging wildlife, because it can start infecting livestock. It can pass to cattle and that sort of thing. Then we've got a whole mess on our hands, right?
This is dark. Can you eat a bovine that's infected?
You can get the bacteria through either raw or unpasteurized milk, or raw or undercooked meats from an infected animal.
Okay.
It's a really big concern for farm workers, and for veterinarians, because you're actually dealing with the tissues that have the lesions and things like that. You're directly in contact with these sick animals.
Right.
But it's a really serious problem. And if you have bovine tuberculosis infection, it's taken very seriously by the cattle industry, by stakeholders in that realm. So it ramps up immediately into this huge thing of monitoring and eradicating and trying to stomp out that infection as soon as possible. That's when I worked in Indiana, that's why I was there, because they had a few positives of bovine tuberculosis in deer there that they were worried was going to jump into the cattle population.
Gotcha.
And even just a few positives there turned into a multi-year monitoring program.
Wow.
Where they looked at they tested hundreds of deer. It became a very big deal. So
wow.
Yeah, it's intense. The other one that they're very concerned about is also extremely dangerous. It's brucellosis, which is another bacterial infection. The one that affects bison primarily is Brucella abortus, which, based on the name, gives you an idea that it affects the liver, the spleen, and also the reproductive system. So it does cause a lot of fetal miscarriage and stillbirth for cattle and bison. which is not great if you're trying to actively recover a population, right? So, yeah,
that's all bad.
yeah, it is. It is really, really bad. Again, that's another extremely dangerous one, and it's one that cattle producers are going to be very on high alert for. So which adds another layer of complication to a recovery program because people don't want free-ranging populations of animals with diseases just going wherever they want. That's a tough sell. So those are the issues, the disease issues they dealt with. Another disease issue that these wood bison struggle with is actually extreme anthrax outbreaks.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, there's anthrax in the soil up there.
Okay.
That occasionally affects these bison, and when it does, it's catastrophic. There have been 23 documented extreme anthrax outbreaks, killing at least 2,266 bison in 3 areas between 1962 and 2015. Wow. And consider that's like a big chunk of the bison that are left. In 2012, there was an outbreak in the McKinsey herd that had about a 50% mortality rate. So it's not great. So a disease, definitely the biggest possible threat that they're facing. In addition to all the other standard threats you'd think about, development, habitat loss, climate change.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
Highlights.
Yes. The classics. So very challenging, right? This whole program they definitely had the odds against them, but like the response and the effort has really made a difference. Okay. Like we said, through the captive breeding, through relocation, reintroduction, they've actually propped up quite a few of these stable and disease-free herds all throughout Canada. It's not just in Alberta. And in 2008, they also started reintroducing them to Alaska as well. So yeah, it's exciting. Like it's honestly, it seems to be going pretty well. The goal for all these, when I was looking at the 2018 recovery plan, their goal, it is just kind of cool to see something expressed in these terms, but their goal is to get all of their current populations to over 1,000 individuals and then maintain that for 200 years. Right? It's like, wow, they're really thinking down the road. This is like a really long, which is nice because that should be the goal. Okay, you are trying to affect the long-term recovery of an animal. The goal is, to keep these 1,000+ disease-free populations, eventually have them interconnect so that there can be gene flow. There can be,
disease flow though.
Get some of that. No, they're disease. Gotta keep them disease-free.
Okay.
They gotta keep them away from the about half of the current population is disease-free. All of the ones in Wood Buffalo National Park are diseased. Yeah. So they're going to keep them away from there, but they want them to connect. They're still trying to eradicate the diseases within the national park group. But eventually, once that's taken care of, then you can have, that exchange. They think that, if you have populations at that level for that long, then you've got like a 90% chance of maintaining that genetic diversity in perpetuity, right? So that's very exciting. And what's cool about that is like once you have bison herds that are able to free range over a massive area, we're talking like 20,000 square miles. Like it's a big area up there. Then you can kind of start to think about they really are starting to assume some of that ecological niche that they once had at that point. Like their numbers are very low still. I mean, not that low considering they historically weren't as populous as plains bison, but it's it's very encouraging, I think, to think about wow, that's the goal. And they're making measurable progress towards it. It seems really ambitious to try and achieve a reintroduction on this scale. But it really does seem like the Canadian government and, Alaska Fish and Game, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, like they are really making measurable progress towards that. So that's like, it's an encouraging kind of conservation story, I think. Not as depressing as it sounded like it was going to be right at the beginning, because things did get very bad for a while there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the story of the wood bison. I guess I have some other random things I could say about them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Say some other.
Why not? Let's say some random stuff. Their evolutionary history is kind of interesting. I almost went down a rabbit hole of like bison in the Pleistocene, because there's some really cool bison species like back in the day.
I thought for sure, like...
I know, I was very tempted, but I needed to like at some point reduce the scope of the episode.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's some very cool ones. Bison latifrons, massive, huge horned, is a like that was more of an early Pleistocene ancestor, and B. priscus more recently in the Pleistocene, which had 2 humps.
Ooh, a
cool
2-humped bison.
2-humped bison.
What was the second hump for? Snow?
Just extra power.
Extra snow?
Because these would have been from the steppe. These were Asian steppe species,
Right.
In the Pleistocene that would have migrated here. That's where they come from. The divergence between wood bison and plains bison was very recent. It was only like 5,000 years ago. So like post Pleistocene, like they're very closely related, extremely closely related, and they're actually really still closely related to a lot of the old world bison species, right? Plains bison, wood bison, very closely related to European bison, very closely related to the steppe bison, which is no longer around. But they have actually like reintroduced some wood bison to Russia.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, where it's even colder, and they love it there.
Aw. Wait, I'm still stuck on this 2-hump thing. Where are the humps? Is it like a Bactrian camel? Or is it like 1 hump per like side of the neck?
I'll show you a
Like,
picture.
Ew.
I'll show you a picture. 1 hump per like pauldrons, like no. This is some paleo art of a B. priscus.
that looks like 1 hump.
Yeah, but it's 2.
I can kind of see it.
Yeah,
A little bit.
it's a double hump.
Yeah. It's
it's
one
like-
big hump with 2 knobs on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
So
I'm
it's
sorry.
it's like a hump with a saddle knob on the front.
Yeah,
the back.
like there you go. Like see, there's like it with the plains bison right there. Like boop boop, double hump.
Okay.
All right, you know what?
Sus.
If you don't want to believe mammalogists, you don't have
Well,
to.
it just looks like it's all the same structure.
Wow.
Well,
what
probably,
kind of is-
underneath it
Yeah.
probably is more obvious.
Probably. Probably.
Yeah, so they're actually the wood bison are actually a good candidate for potentially reintroducing steppe bison as well, by you like having them be a host for cloned embryos of steppe bison,
Wow.
which is. I don't know. Is that Jurassic Parky? A little bit, but I'm
bit.
kind of for it.
Yeah.
Because bison are neat.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Also, if we completely mess up in the future and we're like, oops, we introduced diseased plains bison to every wood bison population that exists because one weird guy got in charge of some stuff, it gives some hope for the future that, we could potentially re-incubate new ones and try again.
Yeah, that's the spirit.
Well, that's a lot of work. That's a whole ethical thing we
Yeah.
don't need to get into, but yeah.
Well, yes, it is, but
Why does that feel better than the quagga? I don't remember. That was so long ago that I did that
Yeah.
episode. I don't remember why I hated the quagga project so much, but I really did.
Yeah.
The steppe bison, sure, why not? I don't know why that's different.
Maybe you've changed. Do you still, how do
Maybe.
you feel about the quagga now?
Well, I still hate them, but I don't remember why I hate them. So I don't think that's
like-
a valid point.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to
Yeah.
revisit that.
I don't know how I feel about it either necessarily. But I don't know. It's for such a recently. Yeah. What?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The quagga went extinct because it just went extinct. Whereas all of these other animals went extinct because humans,
Right.
And that feels
Yeah.
different. When
Yeah,
you're
that's
fixing a
true.
mistake and it has a place to go back to,
Yes.
that is different
That is a good
than
point.
I just want a cool animal to come back.
Yes, because in theory, if you designate, critical habitats
Mm-hmm.
and allow these critical habitats, allow connection and migration between these critical habitats, then you can actually, there is like a place for these animals to go.
Yes.
You're right. Like you can, to an extent, restore that ecological niche. Not on the same scale it used to be, but you can still have them like a stable wild population existing ecologically like it should is a possibility for these animals still. So yeah, it is a little different. It's not like bringing back a woolly mammoth, which would be awesome. But
Where are we going to put them?
yeah, but where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Besides Siberia, maybe? Or,
Ooh.
The Pleistocene Park.
Yeah.
By the way, those temperatures in Russia that these wood bison hang out in, negative 71.2 degrees Celsius. God, ooh, don't you just, it makes me just want to like bundle up and go for a walk, you know? Like,
Is that without wind chill? I never thought about this before.
Oh, no.
I would have, that's a good question. I don't know if the wind exposure is as heavy in, they are in the woods, right? So I don't know if these wet meadows that they hang out in are as wind exposed as like plains bison. Yeah, in an open habitat. Go ahead, Rachel. You have a question.
Yeah. Are bison immune to wind chill?
Immune to wind chill?
Yeah, because they're, I don't know, furry.
I often say, right, there is no bad weather. There's only the wrong clothes.
And they're wearing the correct clothes.
They're wearing the correct clothes. Yes. They are outfitted for that kind of, those kinds of elements.
Do they overheat if they're brought to areas where they're not supposed to be?
Probably.
Like further south? Like if they were at a zoo in Texas when they die?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. It's probably not great for them. They wouldn't be, I can't imagine they'd be very happy. Yeah.
Until the one, freeze every 3 years that shuts down all of Texas.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me see. Do I have anything else I want to say?
Okay. Have you ever met a wood bison?
Have I ever met a wood bison? I have not.
I haven't either.
What?
You guys want to go to Canada?
Yeah, sure. Tomorrow?
Probably not a great time of year to go to Canada, if I'm being honest. But
Hey, there's no bad weather. There's only bad clothes.
I know. I'm just thinking about you guys.
Aw.
I'd be fine with it. We would never get you guys or my wife outside in that weather.
No, I would not. Sorry.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah. You asked me to walk your dog earlier this week because it was too cold.
The wind chill is negative 22.
Okay. Well, just kind of, all right, You think the bison, just be like a bison. All right, just deal with it. Okay.
Demonstrably nothing like a bison in terms of equipment.
Yeah. I had to spend hundreds of dollars to approach bison level of warmth.
Yeah. Also,
approach.
She's missing like close to 2,000 pounds of the mass
All right.
she needs.
Fair enough. What? Hang on. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say. Yeah. Now, I know there's obviously there's a lot more we could talk about with bison. And at some point, it would probably be worth delving into a little bit the story of the plains bison as well, because important. This is very important.
Yeah.
And we really haven't talked about them very much
We
on this
haven't,
podcast,
no.
for the iconic grasslands animal of North America.
Yeah, it is kind of wild to think about these animals becoming so significant to North America when they really started off in Eurasia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, this latecomer to North America kind of
Just took over.
Yeah, and really made it its home, and it's so integrated with the people that lived here, that still live here.
It would be interesting to kind of delve into, because the time period of their influx into the country and the rise of grasslands in North America, the development of grasslands in North America, of the North American prairies, they go very hand in hand. So it's kind of interesting to see, that's the relationship is very strong there, very key. So it would be interesting to look into that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And perhaps we will another day. But it's just nice to think now about, things aren't as depressing as they could be. Right? That's what I want you guys to think about.
great.
Even something that's considered ecologically extinct now may not be in the future.
Wow.
And there's a lot of good people who are committed to making that a reality. So that's what's encouraging. It's nice. I think we have to tune in sometimes to the more positive, more encouraging conservation stories and not get so damn sad. Because it's very easy to do that when you're interested in this field.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, this is just a random fun fact.
Oh boy.
I'm ready.
The amount of money that they've spent on in Alaska on wood bison reintroduction in the last 25 years, how much do you think they've spent on it? Ballpark me a number.
Billions.
Billions?
The GDP of Alaska.
They have spent $5 million in 25 years. That's the amount of money it takes to pave a mile of highway in Alaska.
Oh, that's not as bad. Okay.
That's not much at all. So can you imagine, like, with the funding and with the resources behind this, what they could do? Like, I'm just saying.
It costs $5 million to pave 1 mile of highway in Alaska.
You gotta get
It's so expensive.
It's expensive to get,
Especially
just to get
Alaska.
materials up there, to get machinery up there. Everything's expensive. They don't have roads in Alaska, Rachel.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, like when I was living in Juneau, I just thought it was so weird that you like take the highway out of town, it just stops. Like you just hit a point where it's like, nope, no more road.
Yeah.
Get a boat, get a plane. See ya. We're done here.
I've worked in Nome, Alaska.
Yeah, I know. That's even more remote.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah.
Juneau's their biggest city, and they're just like, we're out of road now. I guess Angler's their biggest city, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Um,
Also, just like to highlight how significant that positive aspect of ecological extinction going into potential non-extinction in the future and stuff. I don't know. That feels way more plausible for smaller animals and for it to be such a large animal that needs such a huge expanse of land and, like open spaces. And like, I'm even surprised that there's enough area without fences, honestly, in Canada.
Yeah.
Because that's like such a huge problem in the United States. Like I cannot imagine just having outside of national parks, like just free ranging bison herd because everything is fenced off and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like that makes it especially encouraging, this specific story, because it's not just, I don't know, some little fish they managed to preserve one lake for or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's herds of bison
Yeah.
managing to, I don't know, survive, if not thrive.
For sure. Well, and some of that is definitely a factor of the fact that like interior Alaska, northwestern Canada, far less populous than the current range of the plains bison is now, but even still there's a ton of public land in the western United States, where you could reduce some of these barriers and make these things happen. The public support of bison reintroduction has gone way up. Okay, like some recent surveys show that there is a lot of people agree this is our national mammal. This is an iconic thing. Like we need, it's worth protecting. And it's worth having, exist in a form that doesn't directly translate to bison burgers. You know what I mean? So like it's having, like we have 95% of bison currently in agricultural settings, but there's
a future for expansion.
Yeah, there's a future for it. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Bison are up in the polls. Get them back. It's their time. It's their time.
Okay, that's all I got.
Beautiful. Thank you, Allan. And thank you, listener, for tuning in to The Best Biome. This is one of our podcasts that we produce here, Grassland Groupies, a nonprofit focused on grassland education. We're doing a lot of projects this year, so keep in touch with us on social media, etc. You can find all of our links in the description. And we'll be back next month with a new episode. And I believe it's Nicole's episode.
Yee.
Bye.
Bye.
Farewell.